the OSCE meeting in Stockholm and with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Ukraine. And at the OSCE meeting in Stockholm, I had witnessing a lively exchange of views between Minister Lavrov and Secretary of State Blinken about this issue. We, at the European Union, we maintain regular contacts with President Zelensky, with Prime Minister Shimhal, with Foreign Minister Kuleba. We express at all levels our political support to Ukraine. We publicly recall our unwavering support to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its international recognized border. According with the Russian sources, nothing happens. They are only moving their troops inside their territory. They are not violating any international law, nor any constitutional internal rule. And certainly, they are moving troops inside their borders, but with the precedents, with what has happening between Ukraine and Russia, it is quite justified that the Ukrainians are worried and that we have to express our political support. But today we are on prevention mode. Today we are on trying to avoid further escalations and to work on all avenues that we can in order to deter further Russian actions. Today we are on deterring mode, prevention mode, dissuasion mode, in order to avoid the crisis to escalate and to reach a level of military conflict. We are doing what we can for that. Yesterday, at our Foreign Affairs Council, all members reiterated our support to Ukraine, as I said, and also we have recently adopted a set of assistance measures under the European Peace Facility, a new financial tool, which is under my political implementation authority, in supporting Ukrainian armed forces in areas including the provision of military, medical, engineering equipment, mobility, logistic, and cyber defense support. Not providing lethal arms, but on all the fields that an army requires in order to be operational. This is a tangible way of showing our support to strengthening Ukrainian resilience and also our support to the Ukrainian reform agenda since 2014. Because the reforms inside Ukraine are also an important component of Ukrainians' overall resilience to external challenges. The better will be functioning the Ukrainian democracy, the highest quality will have on fighting against internal problems, they will be stronger to face external challenges. But we have today to talk about an attempt to undermine further the Ukrainian territorial integrity, which was jeopardized when Russia took over on Crimea. And this would come, if it happens again, with severe political consequences and with a high political and economic cost for Russia, if this was the case. We have to act in unity. We are coordinating closely with our transatlantic and like-minded partners. We did that on Sunday, and our G7 statement was clear on this position. We called on Russia to de-escalate, to pursue diplomatic channels, and abide by its international commitments on transparency of military activities, as President Biden also did in his call with President Putin on the last 7th of December. In the meantime, as I said, we are on deterrent, dissuasion, prevention mode, And we will continue to do a full diplomatic outreach. We will reconfirm our support to France and Germany in the Normandy format to achieve full implementation of the Minsk agreements in order to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine. We are studying the different scenarios that one could imagine that could happen in the following days or weeks. We recall Russia's responsibility in implementing the Minsk agreements remains a key issue, and we will continue demonstrating that we will not hesitate to take actions when needed by imposing restrictive measures against the Russia-based Wagner Group. I want to raise your attention to the fact that these restrictive measures have already been taken and the Council approved yesterday. I know that for the Russian authorities, Wagner Group is a private company, as private as the one that could produce sweets. But in any case, we consider that we have to show our strong determination to stand up for our interests and values in our neighborhood and beyond. Honourable members, Ukraine has the right to make its own foreign and security policy choices. It's an independent and sovereign country, and it has the right to make its own foreign and security policy choices. And we respect fully these choices. Since the starting point of the conflict, almost 8 years ago, we have been steadfast by the Ukrainian side. Furthermore, the Ukrainians' diplomatic efforts to keep the illegal annexation of Crimea high on the international agenda, including through the launch of this international Crimean platform, are welcome and will be supported. And tomorrow, at the meeting of the Eastern Partnership Summit, we will have another occasion to stress that there is a room for enhanced cooperation between the EU and these countries, as well as for gradual convergence in the area of foreign and security policy, in line with partners' commitments with the EU. I think that the strengthening our partners' strategic communication capabilities will also be an important element of building resilience, including the fight against disinformation and information manipulation. And there is a lot of it, as you very well know. So by the time being, once again, we are expecting the best and preparing for the worst. And should the occasion in Ukraine deteriorate, there should not be doubt that we would be ready to respond. But by the time being, we don't want to contribute to any kind of escalation. We want to be on this prevention mode. That's at the end the goal of diplomacy, the work of diplomacy, to try to study the different scenarios, to have an answer prepared for each one of them, and making clear which will be our answer for any one of them if they happen. So, if you allow me to finish with these words, expect the best and be prepared for the worst.
Danke für die Mitteilung Ihrer Einschätzung. Wir kommen zu den Fraktionssprechern und ich darf mit Herrn Michael Gahler beginnen.
Herr Präsident, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, Herr Hoher Beauftragter, ich bin Ihnen dankbar für Ihre Ausführungen und möchte den Ernst der Lage betonen. Ja, wir sind jetzt im Abschreckungsmodus. Dieser erneute russische Truppenaufmarsch geschieht unprovoziert, es sei denn, man betrachtet die schlichte Existenz einer unabhängigen Ukraine als Provokation. Ein Land, das sich demokratisch, wirtschaftlich und sozial um Stabilisierung und Entwicklung bemüht. Putins Mythos der Bedrohung durch die NATO ist hingegen lächerlich. Er weiß das, schon Brezhnev wusste das. Die NATO als Bündnis saturierter Demokratien greift niemanden an. Es sind nicht die Waffen der NATO, sondern die Art, wie man sich in Freiheit organisiert, organisiert, das dann zu einer Provokation wird, wenn das sogar in der Ukraine erfolgreich sein könnte. Die fortgesetzte Aggression gegen die Ukraine seit 2014 hat die Entschlossenheit der Ukraine, einen funktionierenden demokratischen Staat zu etablieren, nicht beeinträchtigt. Weil hier so eindeutig ist, wer der Aggressor ist, sind Gleichsetzungen von Opfer und Täter auch nicht angezeigt. Deeskalieren muss der Aggressor durch Truppenabzug. Die Ukraine hat alles Recht, sich nach Artikel 51 der UNO-Charta zu verteidigen, und ich bin allen dankbar, die Ihnen hierbei auch mit Waffen helfen. Wir werden als EU koordiniert hoffentlich mit unseren transatlantischen Partnern zivil auf militärische Aggressionen reagieren, aber effektiv. Wir sollten die Instrumente dafür schon mal hochhalten. Es wird wehtun, wenn SWIFT abgestellt wird. Den Systemprofiteuren wird es auch wehtun, wenn alle Langzeitvisa abgestellt werden. Und eins dürfte auch klar sein: Ein Nord Stream Pipeline wird nichts liefern, wenn gleichzeitig Krieg geführt wird. Denn wir werden nicht den Krieg mit den Einnahmen aus dieser Pipeline finanzieren. Vielen Dank. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Kollege. Am Wort ist Herr Pedro Marques.
Thank you. The floor now to Pedro Marques.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Vice President. Just a few years ago, Russia illegally annexed Crimea and backed violent separatists that control parts of eastern Ukraine. These were concrete actions against an independent country, a partner, violating its sovereignty and international law. Once again now, Russia is sending strong signals that it may commit yet another violation with a large-scale military build-up along the border with Ukraine, deploying for the second time this year about 100,000 soldiers and military equipment in that border, which makes it clear as a threat to Ukraine and a threat to the stability on the region. Whether the intention is a full-scale military invasion or some kind of hybrid attack, or to intimidate and destabilize Ukraine even further, we must not tolerate it. The European Union, let us be clear, together with its transatlantic partners, must be ready to make full use of severe sanctions that will tell the Russian autocratic regime the price they must pay if they proceed with this line of behavior. We therefore call on the European Summit this Thursday to prepare a strong pack of sanctions, including at least instruments such as the freeze of the European assets of people associated with the Kremlin. And I said at least. If Putin and the Russian oligarchy only knows the language of power and money, they must know how much they will lose if they do not behave differently from what we have seen these last few weeks and months. We would like to establish a normal cooperation with Russia. We have sent all those signs in the past. But it would be beneficial for everyone if that could be done with Russia engaging in a completely different path that respects international law and the stability of our neighborhood. That's certainly the only condition in which we could establish such a normal cooperation, but we are really far from that at this moment. Thank you.
Danke. Ich bitte Herrn Patras Austrevicius zum Rednerpult.
The floor goes now to Mr. Petras Austrevicius.
Mr. Chair, High Representative, dear colleagues, the Russian bear, angrily roaring on the European borders, tries to scare and impose on us rules of jungles. On the other hand, the Russian-speaking bear keeps the permanent member seat at the Security Council of the United Nations, the global forum of international cooperation. Compatible? Shocking? Acceptable? Continuous Russian Federation actions by threatening and destabilizing situation in Ukraine must be regarded as a threat to overall European stability and security. Violating international laws and bilateral treaties, Russia proves being unpredictable, untrustworthy member of international community. Instead of following rules based on good neighborly relations. It tries to force others with red lines and ultimatum rhetorics. Russia's military build-up on Ukraine's borders comes at times of unsettled, assertive and globally growing authoritarianism, which disregards sovereignty and democratic choices of others. Creeping hybrid strategy, intimidation and military pressure used by Russia presents a real threat to Ukraine's sovereignty. Today, as never before, Ukraine needs not only the EU's understanding and solidarity, but a joint, a resolute deterrence and support action. I call on the European Union to come up with a timely decision on the common security and defence policy mission to Ukraine. We have to use in full extent civilian CSDP compact tools to translate our partnership into something more tangible. Everybody understands. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Danke. Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Frau Viola von Kramon-Taubadel.
Mrs. Viola von Kramon-Taubadel has the floor.
Herr Präsident, High Representative, dear colleagues, we have seen this before. A bully blackmails its weaker neighbors while the rest of the world watches. We have seen this in April. We have seen this countless times in the history of mankind. And history teaches us that appeasing a bully is a very dangerous strategy. It is immoral and counterproductive. As we speak, 100,000 Russian troops are mobilized on the Ukrainian border. The number is expected to rise dramatically. Those who know Mr. Putin know that approaching Christmas is a particularly dangerous period. That's why we need to remain vigilant and resolute. Ukraine is not targeted because it is a danger, but because its people stand up for European values, because they dare to be free, and because they want to decide their own fate. Nothing terrifies the Kremlin more than a free democratic nation on its own borders. Meanwhile, how do we react? Some still suggest that Nord Stream 2 should continue. The main export of the Kremlin is not gas, oil, arms, but chaos. One Russian ideologue has openly stated. By increasing our dependency on Russia, we betray our allies and endanger the future of this continent. It is time for our foreign policy to show teeth and speak with bullies in a language they understand, the language of tough sanctions. Punishment of Russia must be unprecedented if it dares to start another war against Ukraine. Cut off Russia from a SWIFT system, scrap Nord Stream 2, and sanction Putin and his entourage. More importantly, show the Kremlin that bullying is counterproductive by advancing partnership with Ukraine every time the Kremlin tries to intimidate it. Dear colleagues, let's practice what we preach and show Russia that in the world of international law, might does not make right. Stand up for Ukraine.
Danke. 2 Minuten 30 hat nun Herr Madison.
Jaak Madison has the floor.
Austatud istungi juhataja, lugupeetud kõrge välisesindaja, head kolleegid. Kindlasti paljudel on küsimus, et mis võiks praegune Venemaa eesmärk olla ja kas nende mitte saavutamisel oldaks valmis ka uuesti sõjaliselt nende nimel tegutsema, nagu hiljuti Gruusias, Krimmis või Moldovas. Eesmärkide osas on üpris lihtne. Venemaa on selgelt öelnud, et soovib saada juriidilist garantiid, et NATO ei võta vastu uusi liikmesriike Venemaa naabruses ning ei soovita näha enda piiridele liiga lähedal NATO sõjaväeüksusi või relvastust. Sellised nõudmised on saanud võimalikuks eelkõige seetõttu, et Venemaa tunnetab nii USA kui Euroopa Liidu nõrkust. Olgu öeldud, et senini on pea kõik Venemaa etteheited olnud valed ja tegelikkust moonutavad. NATO sõjalised üksused Ida-Euroopas on vaid kaitseks, mitte Venemaa ähvardamiseks. Ainult hull võiks arvata, et Euroopa riikidel kui USA-l oleks motivatsiooni sõjaliselt ähvardada Venemaad. Samuti on täiesti absurdsed Venemaa Venemaa nõuded, et temaga piirnevates riikides ei tohi olla NATO sõjalisi üksusi kaitse-eesmärgil või et mõned riigid ei tohiks kunagi saada NATO liikmeks. Kui küsimuse all on Venemaa vägede koondamine Ukraina piiri äärde või agressiivsed sõjaväeõppused Eesti piiri ääres, siis väidab Venemaa, et Venemaa teeb oma territooriumil mida vaid soovib. Kuid täpselt sama õigus kehtib ka teistele riikidele. Kui Ukraina soovib liituda NATO-ga, siis see on tema õigus. Kui ka NATO teised liikmed sellega nõus on. Kui Eesti või Poola soovivad oma territooriumil näha liitlasvägesid, siis on nende õigus ja Venemaal puudub igasugune alus pretensioonideks. Eriti arvestades Venemaa ajaloolist käitumist ja viimase 15 aasta jooksul algatatud sõdu. Venemaa võiks olla majanduslikult meile väga hea partner ja ka mõnes mõttes liitlane, kui arvestada suhteid Hiinaga. Kuid headeks suheteks peab olema valmidus mõlemal poolel. Venemaa kui kõige suurema territooriumi riik maailmas peab aru saama, et möödas on eelmine sajand, kui veel kommunistliku terroriga oli võimalik korda saata okupatsioone, massimõrvu või küüditamisi. Venemaa peaks aru saama, et headest suhetest oma naabritega on neil väga palju võita. Kuid selleks, et nad sellest heast võimalusest ka hästi aru saaksid, peaksime meie, see tähendab Euroopa riigid, olema valmis ennast kaitsma ükskõik milliste vahenditega ja praegusel hetkel osutama igakülgset abi Ukrainale. Võtkem siin eeskujuks Soome, riik, mis omab majanduslikult stabiilseid suhteid Venemaaga, kuid samal ajal omab üks parimat armeed Euroopas ja seda
yet also has one of the best armies in Europe, and not on account of Sweden or Norway.
Danke. Frau Kollegin Anna Fotyga.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Anna Fotyga.
Panie Przewodniczący.
Thank you very much, President.
40 lat temu z okładem 10 milionów Polaków, tak jak ja, zakochanych w Solidarności, zadawało sobie pytanie, wejdą, nie wejdą. To było o ówczesnym Kremlu, w systemie komunistycznym. Od 8 lat, od czasów Majdanu, robią to Ukraińcy. Co chwila muszą się uporać z zagrożeniem, z wzrastającym niebezpieczeństwem. Od 2014 roku aneksją znacznej części swojego terytorium, okupacją wschodu Ukrainy, presją gospodarczą, cybernetyczną, dezinformacyjną, zabronieniem im jakiegokolwiek międzynarodowego wyboru. Czym się różni tamten świat 40 lat temu od tego, z czym mamy do czynienia w tej chwili? Wówczas kolektywny Zachód był w stanie przekazać jasną, jednoznaczną, wyraźną odpowiedź Kremlowi, komunistycznemu Kremlowi Związku Sowieckiego, o tym, że aneksja Polski będzie spotkać się z bardzo istotnymi konsekwencjami. Nie było wówczas mowy o artykule 5, byliśmy częścią bloku sowieckiego, a jednak ta groźba była na tyle wyraźna. I ta niepewność strategiczna, którą narzucono Związkowi Sowieckiemu, na tyle skuteczna, że my byliśmy pewni, że oni nie wejdą. Ta odpowiedź Zachodu wobec Ukrainy i adresowana do Federacji Rosyjskiej, do dzisiejszego Kremla, powinna być równie jasna. Wara od Ukrainy.
Clarity. Leave Ukraine alone.
Danke. Herr Mick Wallace.
Thank you. Mr. Mick Wallace has the floor.
Zelensky came to power on a landslide with a mandate to end the war against the secessionists in the east, which has claimed thousands of lives and has had dire economic repercussions for millions of Ukrainians. There is, in the form of the 2015 Minsk II agreement a framework, a pathway to achieve a lasting peace. This solution has been endorsed by the US and the UN and was negotiated between France, Germany, Ukraine and Russia, providing for autonomy for a demilitarised Donbass within Ukraine, but guaranteed by international treaty. This joint motion lays the blame for the lack of progress on Minsk exclusively at Russia's feet, but this is a fantasy. Russia has engaged seriously with the process, only to have Zelensky side repeatedly add extra conditions at the last minute, or watch on as ultranationalist militias, who always seem to have a fresh stash of US-made weaponry, repeatedly and blatantly refuse to obey the orders coming from Kiev. There are serious internal problems in Ukraine, between Ukrainians, about what kind of country they want to build. We cannot simply project all this conflict as somewhat a Russian problem. If we do, we will never understand the dynamics well enough in order to be of any help to the Ukrainian people. In fact, we are more likely to introduce more violence into the region. If we want peace, we need to support a framework where Russia is part of the solution and not always treated as an enemy. We need to open our minds and open our eyes. Thank you.
Danke. Bevor ich Herrn Kubilius das Wort erteile, schalten wir noch nach Athen zu Herrn Papadakis Kostas.
Οι εξελίξεις είναι κίνδυνος θάνατος για τους λαούς. Συγκέντρωση στρατιωτικών δυνάμεων των ΝΑΤΟ, Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών, Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης σε διάταξη σύγκρουσης και περικύκλωσης ανταγωνίστριας της Ρωσίας, πολεμικές απειλές και προειδοποιήσεις με επιδίωξη την ένταξη της Ουκρανίας στο ΝΑΤΟ και κλιμάκωση της κούρσας των εξοπλισμών, ένταση στα σύνορα Λευκορωσίας-Πολωνίας με χιλιάδες εγκλωβισμένους πρόσφυγες, θύματα των υπερελιστικών επεμβάσεων, στρατιωτικές ασκήσεις όπως η Atlantic Resolve κυριολεκτικά πρόβες πολέμου, νέα αμερικάνικη βάση στην Αλεξανδρούπολη, στρατηγικός κόμβος για την υλοποίηση των επικίνδυνων υπερελιστικών σχεδίων στην ευρύτερη περιοχή, συνέχιση της στρατηγικής σχέσης της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και των ΗΠΑ με την αστική τάξη της Τουρκίας και υποκριτικές κυρώσεις της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης για το προκλητικό άνοιγμα των βαροσίων στη γραμμή διαιώνισης της κατοχής στην Κύπρο. Απαιτούμε να σταματήσουν οι ευρωατλαντικές ασκήσεις που στρέφονται κατά της Ρωσίας και άλλων κρατών, να τερματιστεί η κατοχή στην Κύπρο, να εξασφαλιστούν τα δικαιώματα των προσφύγων, να κλείσουν οι αμερικανοανατολικές βάσεις από την Ελλάδα που έσπηραν οι κυβερνήσεις της Νέας Δημοκρατίας, του ΣΥΡΙΖΑ και του ΠΑΣΟΚ, καμία αποστολή ελληνικών στρατιωτικών δυνάμεων εκτός συνόρων.
Now, Andreas Kubilius has the floor.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, what we are discussing today, it's not just one more discussion about aggressive behavior of Kremlin. It is possible that in the future, this day will be shown as a day when geopolitical future of the European Union in the 21st century started to be designed. Putin, who started the war against Georgia in 2008 and against Ukraine in 2014, now is demanding that those countries should not take care about their security and that the West should abandon them. And here is the most important question to us.